I've been a long-haul trucker for almost 15 years now, and I've seen my fair share of weird things on the road. Strange lights in the sky, animals that didn't look quite right, people standing too close to the highway at night. But nothing ever got under my skin like what happened on Route 17 about 5 years back. I was hauling a load from Raleigh to Charleston, an overnight drive I'd done dozens of times before. That stretch of highway is mostly empty after midnight, just miles of dark asphalt cutting through nothing. It was sometime past 2 in the morning when I pulled into a little roadside diner I knew well, Maggie's, one of those old-school places with checkered floors and a jukebox that never worked. I just wanted a cup of coffee and a break before pushing through the last few hours of my route. The place was almost deserted. A couple of truckers sat at the counter, mumbling to each other between sips of coffee, and a tired-looking waitress named Darlene, who I recognized from past stops, was wiping down the tables. I nodded at her and took my usual booth by the window. My rig was parked right outside, one of the only vehicles in the lot. The only other car there was an old, beat-up sedan, the kind that had seen too many miles and not enough maintenance. I barely paid it any attention. I drank my coffee, exchanged a few words with Darlene, and after about 20 minutes, I was back in my truck, pulling onto the highway. That's when I noticed the sedan again. It pulled out right after me, no headlights on. At first I figured it was some careless driver or maybe a guy who'd had a little too much coffee and forgot to flick his lights back on. But as I drove, the feeling that something was off crept in. I'd changed lanes, and so would the sedan. I'd slow down, and it'd match my speed. I even pulled into the right lane at one point, thinking they'd pass, but they didn't. Just stuck behind me, close enough that I could barely make out their outline in the side mirror. I told myself I was imagining things. It was late, I was tired, and paranoia isn't exactly uncommon when you spend nights alone on the road. But when I pulled into a gas station about 40 minutes later, the sedan followed. That was when the unease turned to something colder. I parked by pump 4, got out, stretched my legs. The sedan rolled into a spot a few spaces away. The driver didn't get out, just sat there. No movement, no lights, no engine hum that I could hear. Just a dark, motionless silhouette behind the windshield. I tried not to let it get to me. Maybe the guy was just taking a break. Maybe he was lost. Hell, maybe he was sleeping. I filled up my tank, went inside to grab another coffee, and kept an eye on the sedan through the glass door. Still no movement. The clerk, a guy in his 20s with tired eyes and a name tag that read Josh, handed me my receipt. I considered asking him if he'd seen the car before, but I didn't want to sound paranoid. Instead, I just lingered a bit, pretending to check my phone. But when I glanced back outside, I swear I saw something shift in the driver's seat. Not like he was adjusting himself, more like he was turning his head toward me. That was enough for me. I walked out, climbed into my rig, and pulled onto the highway without looking back. The coffee burned my tongue, but I didn't care. I just wanted to put distance between me and that damn sedan. For the next hour, I kept checking my mirrors, expecting to see those headlights, or lack of them, creeping up behind me. But the road was empty. Just me, the hum of my tires, and the occasional flicker of a road sign in my headlights. I told myself I was being stupid, that it was just another traveler heading the same way, and for a while, I believed it. Then my CB radio crackled. Now, truckers use CBs for all kinds of things: traffic updates, weather warnings, the occasional dirty joke to break up the monotony. But this wasn't any of that. This was a soft, whispering voice saying my name. My name. I damn near slammed on the brakes. I hadn't talked to anyone that night, hadn't checked in at a way station, hadn't even given my name to Josh at the gas station. There was no way in hell anyone out here should have known it. I grabbed the mic, my hand clammy around the plastic. "Who is this?" My own voice sounded steadier than I felt. Silence. Then another whisper, slow and deliberate. You shouldn't have stopped at Maggie's." My stomach dropped. I gripped the wheel tighter, my pulse hammering in my ears. The road stretched ahead, dark and empty. But I suddenly felt like I wasn't alone. My headlights cut through the night, illuminating nothing but the worn asphalt and the occasional mile marker. But I couldn't shake the feeling that someone, or something, was out there watching. I forced myself to take a deep breath and pressed the CB mic again. "Who is this?" I asked, keeping my voice as level as I could. No answer, just the low static of the radio. I flicked through the channels, but every one of them was dead silent. That alone was strange. There's almost always chatter, even in the middle of the night. But not now. It was like the whole highway had gone silent just for me. I tried to tell myself it was a prank. Maybe another trucker messing with me, maybe some local bored out of his mind with a radio transmitter. But deep down, I knew better. I'd heard plenty of jokes over the CB before. This wasn't that. This was something else. And then, as if to confirm it, my headlights caught movement up ahead. A figure standing by the side of the road. At first I thought it was a hitchhiker, but as I got closer, a sick realization settled in. The figure wasn't moving, just standing there, perfectly still, right at the edge of the shoulder. A man, tall and thin, dressed in dark clothes that blended into the night. He was facing the road, but I couldn't make out his face. My grip tightened on the wheel, every instinct in me screaming to keep driving. Don't slow down, don't look. And then, just as I passed him, my CB crackled to life again. That same whispering voice. "I see you." I slammed my foot on the gas, my rig groaning as it picked up speed. My hands were slick with sweat, gripping the wheel like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. I didn't dare check my mirrors. I didn't want to see if that figure was still standing there, or worse, if he'd moved. The road stretched on, endless and empty, but my mind wouldn't stop racing. How the hell did he know my name? How did he know I stopped at Maggie's? I forced myself to think rationally. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Maybe I misheard the CB. Maybe the diner had cameras, and some trucker was playing a cruel joke. But none of that explained the sedan. None of that explained the way the air in my cab felt thick and suffocating, like I wasn't alone. I drove for another hour, my eyes flicking between the road and the CB, half expecting that voice to whisper again. But the radio stayed silent, the static barely a hum in the background. Just when I started to think maybe it was over, I saw something up ahead. Red tail lights in the distance. My stomach twisted. The sedan. It was parked on the side of the road, just sitting there like it had been waiting for me. Its headlights were still off, the driver's seat shrouded in darkness. My rig roared past it, but I caught a glimpse of something, or someone inside. A shape, too shadowed to make out, but I swear it was looking right at me. And then my CB crackled again. This time, the voice wasn't whispering. It was laughing, low, guttural, and wrong. I yanked the CB mic off its hook and shouted, "Who the hell are you?" But the laughter just kept going, warping into something distorted, like it wasn't coming from a person at all. My skin crawled. I switched channels, flipping through static, trying to escape the sound. Nothing. Every single channel was empty, except for that awful rasping laughter. Then, as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Dead silence. The only sound was my own breath, ragged and uneven. I forced my focus back on the road, but the air in the cab felt heavier, like something was pressing down on me. My knuckles were white on the wheel. I needed to get off this highway. A few miles ahead, I spotted an exit sign, one of those small service stops with a gas station and a motel. It wasn't much, but it was somewhere with lights, people, a place to get my head straight. I took the exit, my rig rumbling as I slowed down. The gas station was open, neon buzzing in the dark. I pulled into the lot, threw it in park, and sat there for a second, gripping the wheel, trying to shake the feeling that something was still watching me. Then I saw it. The sedan, parked at the far end of the lot. This time, the driver's side door was open, and the seat was empty. I didn't think. I grabbed my keys, jumped out of the truck, and bolted into the gas station. The clerk, some guy in a faded baseball cap, looked up from his magazine, startled. "You okay, man?" he asked. I must have looked like a lunatic, standing there, breathing hard, my shirt damp with sweat. I turned, expecting to see that figure stepping into the store, but there was nothing. Just the night beyond the glass doors. I didn't leave that gas station until the sun started creeping over the horizon. When I finally got the nerve to go back outside, the sedan was gone. No tire marks, no trace it had ever been there. I finished my route that morning, but I haven't driven Route 17 at night since, and I never ever turn on my CB radio after dark. I've been driving trucks for the better part of 15 years, mostly running routes between Pennsylvania and Ohio. Nothing glamorous, just long nights, bad coffee, and a rotating playlist of old rock and talk radio to keep me awake. I've seen my fair share of weird stuff on the road, but this one night about 3 years ago still sticks with me. It happened at some nameless rest stop off I-80. One of those places that's nothing more than a row of vending machines, dim parking lot lights, and a bathroom that probably hasn't been cleaned in weeks. I had pulled in late, exhausted from an already too long haul, just looking for a couple of hours of shut-eye before finishing the last stretch of my trip. There weren't many trucks there, maybe 3 or 4 scattered across the lot. But what caught my eye right away was this unmarked semi parked way off to the side. No company logos, no dot numbers, just a matte gray trailer with hazard lights faintly blinking, like the driver had abandoned it mid-emergency. I figured maybe he'd broken down and was waiting for a tow, but something about it felt off. The trailer door wasn't fully closed. It was cracked open just enough that I could see the sliver of darkness inside. At first, I told myself it was nothing, maybe just a bad latch or a lazy driver. Either way, not my problem. I climbed into my sleeper cab, locked the doors, and stretched out on the bunk. I wasn't even fully asleep when a sharp knock on the window jolted me upright. Not the windshield, not the side door, the cab window, right next to where I was lying down. I turned so fast I nearly gave myself whiplash, but there was nothing there, just the empty parking lot, quiet except for the low hum of idling engines. My pulse was racing, but I tried to shake it off. Maybe I had dreamed it. Maybe the wind had kicked something up. I took a deep breath, laid back down, and told myself to stop being paranoid. Then I saw it. In my side mirror, the unmarked truck's trailer door was shifting, moving wider, like someone inside was pushing it open. At first I didn't see anything, just that same pitch-black interior. But then, clear as day, a silhouette, a person, standing just at the edge of the darkness, watching me. I sat there, frozen, my breath caught in my throat. The figure didn't move at first, just stood there, barely visible in the dim glow of the parking lot lights. I couldn't make out any details, just the shape of a person. Not a driver stepping out for a smoke, not a mechanic checking the truck, just standing, watching. And then, just as quickly as I'd noticed them, they stepped backward into the darkness of the trailer, disappearing completely. The door didn't shut, didn't slam, just hung open, swinging slightly like it had never been touched. I felt a deep, instinctual unease settle into my chest. I wasn't the kind of guy to spook easily. I'd slept at countless rest stops, truck stops, even pulled over on the side of highways when I had no other choice. I'd dealt with weirdos, panhandlers, and the occasional drunk stumbling through a lot. But this was different. Something in my gut was screaming at me to leave, but at the same time, Some stubborn part of my brain told me I was being ridiculous. Maybe it was just another driver messing around. Maybe some poor guy was living out of that truck and didn't want to be seen. Either way, it wasn't my business. I reached for the key in the ignition, debating if I should just get the hell out of there. But a sudden movement in the mirror made my stomach drop. The truck's passenger side door was open now. Not all the way, just enough that I could see a sliver of the dark interior. I hadn't heard it open, hadn't seen anyone move. But there it was, wide enough that someone could have slipped out without me noticing. My skin went cold. If there was someone inside that truck, where were they now? A new thought hit me like a punch to the gut. What if they weren't in the truck anymore? What if they were outside, right now, moving through the shadows, getting closer? I reached for the door lock instinctively, even though I was already locked in. My heart was pounding, and my breath felt too loud in the cramped space of my cab. I scanned the mirrors, trying to catch any movement, but the lot was eerily still. The other trucks were too far away for their drivers to notice anything, and I sure as hell wasn't about to step outside to investigate. My fingers hovered over the ignition again. Maybe I should just leave. But something in me, some stupid, stubborn curiosity, made me hesitate. I needed to see. I needed to know if someone was out there. I leaned forward, peering through the windshield, scanning every dark corner of the lot. And then, in the dim yellow glow of the rest stoplights, I saw something move. A shadow, just at the edge of my vision, slipping between trucks. Too quick to make out, but definitely there. It wasn't the slow, casual movement of some drifter or trucker stretching his legs. It was deliberate, quiet, like whoever, or whatever, it was didn't want to be seen. My hands were shaking now. My gut was screaming at me to go, to start the truck and get the hell out of there. Then the knock came again. 3 sharp raps right against my driver's side door. This time I saw it. A hand, pale, almost gray under the lot lights, vanishing just as I turned my head. My stomach twisted into knots. Whoever was out there was messing with me. I reached for my phone, but my fingers felt clumsy, numb. My instincts were at war. Should I call the cops? Or would they be long gone by the time anyone showed up? But before I could do anything, before I could even breathe, a sound filled the cab that I will never forget. The passenger door handle rattled. Not once, not twice. Someone was trying to open it, testing it, checking if it was locked. I didn't think, I just reacted. My hand shot to the ignition, and I turned the key so fast I almost snapped it off. The engine roared to life, and at that exact moment, I saw movement in my side mirror. Something darting away from my truck, disappearing between the rows of parked rigs. I didn't stay to get a better look. I slammed the truck into gear and pulled out of that lot like my life depended on it. My tires screeched against the pavement as I swung onto the highway, my heart hammering in my chest. It wasn't until I was a good 20 miles down the road that I realized my hands were still shaking against the wheel. I kept glancing at my mirrors, half expecting to see that unmarked truck following me, its hazard lights blinking like some kind of eerie beacon. But there was nothing. Just the empty highway stretching out ahead, dark and endless. I tried to tell myself it was just some drifter, some lunatic looking to scare people. But that didn't explain the way they moved. The way they disappeared into that trailer like they belonged to the shadows. The way they knocked, not to be let in, but to let me know they were there. I didn't stop until I hit the next major truck stop, one of those big, well-lit ones with a diner and 24-hour security. I parked right under a floodlight, locked my doors twice, and sat there for a long time, trying to steady my breathing. Eventually, exhaustion won out, and I dozed off, but it was the lightest sleep I'd ever had. Every little noise outside jolted me awake, and every time I opened my eyes, I half expected to see a shadow standing just outside my window. I've been back on that route plenty of times since, but I never stopped at that rest area again. I don't even glance in its direction when I pass by. And that unmarked truck? I never saw it again. But sometimes, when I'm parked for the night in some lonely lot, I still think about that night. And I wonder, was that truck just sitting there, waiting for me? Or does it still pull into rest stops, somewhere out in the dark, waiting for the next driver to notice the door hanging just slightly open? I've been driving trucks for nearly 15 years, and I've seen my fair share of weird shit on the road. Things that make you question if you're just sleep-deprived or if reality itself is slipping. But this one still keeps me up at night. It happened about 6 years ago on a long-haul trip through the Midwest. I was running low on energy, trying to push through the last leg of a shift before stopping for a few hours of shut-eye. The road was empty, stretching out in both directions like a black ribbon under the stars. That's when I saw him. A lone figure standing on the shoulder, thumb out, illuminated in my high beams. I don't usually pick up hitchhikers, but something about him. I don't know, I guess I just felt bad. The guy looked rough, like he'd been on the road for a long time. He was middle-aged, maybe late 40s, with a weathered face and a thick beard. He wore a faded flannel jacket, dirt-streaked jeans, and a backpack that had seen better days. I rolled down the window and asked where he was headed. His answer was vague, something about just down the road, but he sounded exhausted, like he'd been walking for miles. Against my better judgment, I told him to hop in. He climbed into the cab without another word, his boots scraping against the metal step. The silence was heavy. I tried making small talk, asking where he was coming from, but his answers were short, almost reluctant. He mentioned working construction a long time ago, but didn't say much else. After a while, I gave up and let the radio fill the void. The whole time, I felt this strange tension in the air. Not like he was dangerous, just off. He kept his hands folded in his lap, staring straight ahead, his breathing slow and even. Every so often, I'd glance at him out of the corner of my eye, but he never moved much, like he was barely there. About 20 minutes in, he shifted in his seat and muttered something under his breath. I turned the volume down. "What was that?" I asked. He cleared his throat, still staring straight ahead. "Need to stretch my legs," he said, his voice low, almost like he wasn't sure he wanted to say it out loud. I spotted a truck stop coming up in a few miles and told him I'd pull over soon. But before we even reached it, he pointed to the side of the road and said, "Here's fine." I didn't see anything, just darkness and endless road. But I wasn't about to argue. I eased onto the shoulder, letting the engine idle as he opened the door. He climbed out slowly, one boot hitting the pavement, then the other. He adjusted the straps on his backpack, nodded once in my direction, and shut the door behind him. I watched him in the mirror as he stepped away from the truck, his figure barely visible in the dim glow of my taillights. He didn't walk toward the road, didn't head in any particular direction. He just stood there, like he was waiting for something. I glanced at the truck stop sign glowing in the distance, still a mile ahead, then back at the mirror. That's when my stomach dropped. He was gone. I blinked, leaning forward to get a better look, my eyes darting across the roadside. There was nowhere for him to go. No trees, no ditches, just flat, open land stretching in every direction. I checked my driver's side mirror, then the passenger one. Nothing. It was like he had vanished into thin air. My chest tightened, and a cold sweat prickled at the back of my neck. I knew what I had seen. He was there. He stepped out of my truck. And now, he wasn't. My hands tightened around the wheel. I told myself maybe he'd crouched down. Maybe he was just out of my sight line. But my gut knew better. The road was too empty, too exposed. The guy should have been visible, at least in the faint red glow of my brake lights. A deep, gnawing unease settled in my chest, something primal telling me to leave. So I did. I put the truck in gear, pulled back onto the highway and kept my eyes fixed ahead. I wasn't about to linger and find out what the hell had just happened. I kept driving, my eyes flicking to the mirrors every few seconds, half expecting to see him standing in the middle of the road behind me. The truck stop came into view, its neon signs buzzing in the darkness, casting a pale glow over the lot. I pulled in, parked, and forced myself to take a few deep breaths. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe I had imagined the whole thing. But no matter how many times I tried to reason it away, I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I stepped inside the diner, the smell of stale coffee and frying grease hitting me like a wall. A few truckers sat at the counter, a couple of tired-looking waitresses shuffling between tables. I grabbed a seat and ordered a coffee, my hands still unsteady as I wrapped them around the warm mug. After a few minutes, I turned to the guy sitting a few stools down, an older trucker, the kind who'd probably seen more road than I ever would. "You ever pick up a hitchhiker out on Route 24? I asked, keeping my voice casual. His eyes flicked up to mine, his expression unreadable. He took a slow sip of his coffee before answering. "What did he look like?" I swallowed hard. "Middle-aged, beard, wore an old flannel and a backpack, didn't talk much." The man set his mug down with a quiet clink. "You let him out before the truck stopped, didn't you?" My stomach twisted. "Yeah, how'd you know?" He sighed, rubbing a hand over his face. "Because you're not the first, and you won't be the last." I've been driving trucks for nearly 15 years, and I've seen my share of weird shit out on the road. You spend enough nights alone on highways stretching through nowhere, and you start to notice things. Shadows moving where they shouldn't. Headlights appearing in your mirror for hours before vanishing without a trace. But nothing ever stuck with me the way that night did. It was late October, and I was hauling a load of auto parts through the Midwest, somewhere between Nebraska and Wyoming. The kind of stretch where rest stops are few and far between, and the radio crackles with nothing but static. I had been driving for 10 hours straight and needed a break. So when I saw an old rest stop up ahead, flickering neon barely clinging to life, I figured it was as good a place as any to stretch my legs. The parking lot was almost empty. Just one other truck parked at the far end, engine silent, windows dark. The only sign of life was a single buzzing streetlight, flickering off and on like it couldn't decide whether to die yet. I killed my engine, stepped out into the cold, and headed for the restroom. Inside, the place was exactly what you'd expect. Cracked tiles, a mirror stained with streaks of God knows what, and that strange silence that only exists in places meant to be temporary. I was in and out in under 5 minutes, didn't see a soul. But when I got back to my truck, that's when I saw it. A piece of paper, folded in half, tucked under my windshield wiper. My first thought was some kind of advertisement, maybe a flyer for a nearby motel. But when I unfolded it, my stomach tightened. Just 5 words, scrawled in uneven, almost frantic handwriting. "You're being watched." I glanced around, suddenly aware of how empty the lot was. The other truck hadn't moved, no sign of anyone nearby. The wind rustled through the trees, and I told myself it was probably just some idiot messing around. Maybe a kid trying to spook truckers for fun. I crumpled the note, tossed it on the passenger seat, and fired up the engine. I pulled out of the lot, watching the rest stop shrink in my mirror until it was nothing but a distant glow. The highway stretched dark and empty in front of me, the kind of silence that presses against your ears. A couple of hours passed, nothing unusual. I was settling back into the rhythm of the road when something in my side mirror caught my eye. A faint red light blinking in my trailer. I frowned, leaning forward. It wasn't my brake lights, it was inside. A tiny flicker, just barely visible through the cracks in the doors. I felt a tight knot form in my chest. Pulling onto the shoulder, I grabbed my flashlight and stepped out, the cold air cutting through my jacket as I walked to the back of my truck. The doors were locked, my trailer seals untouched. But then I saw it. Another note, tucked neatly under the latch. My fingers felt stiff as I pulled it free and flipped it open. We're closer now. I stood there for a moment, the highway stretching empty in both directions, the only sound the distant hum of my engine. My flashlight beam wavered slightly as I stared at the note, the words sinking in. Someone had been here while I was driving. My mind raced through possibilities. Had someone climbed onto my truck at the rest stop? Was there a stowaway in my trailer? That didn't make sense. The locks were intact, the seals unbroken. And yet, I glanced up at the tiny gap between the trailer doors, the place where I had seen that blinking red light. Nothing now but darkness. I took a slow breath and forced myself to move, running my hand along the trailer's edge, checking for anything out of place. No signs of forced entry, no footprints in the dirt on the shoulder. Just me, my truck, and that note. My fingers tightened around it before I shoved it in my pocket. Maybe this was some elaborate prank. Maybe some other driver was screwing with me. That thought helped, but it didn't sit right. Who would go to this much effort, following me in the dead of night just to leave notes? The unease settled deep in my gut, but I wasn't about to stand there waiting to see what happened next. I climbed back into the cab, locked the doors, and pulled onto the highway. For the next hour, I kept checking my mirrors, half expecting to see that red light again. But there was nothing, just the road, stretching endlessly ahead, my headlights carving a tunnel through the dark. My radio had cut out an hour ago, leaving me alone with the hum of the tires. I tried to shake it off, focus on the drive, but my hands kept tightening around the wheel. Then, somewhere around mile marker 217, the CB radio crackled. I hadn't touched it all night. The static was faint at first, barely noticeable. Then, through the white noise, a voice. "You should pull over, driver." My blood ran cold. The voice was slow, deliberate, like someone forcing the words through a bad connection. I reached for the dial, adjusting the frequency, but the static swallowed everything again. My pulse pounded in my ears. No one had called me by name. No one had said my truck number. But that voice, whoever it was, they were talking to me. I stared at the radio, my hand frozen on the dial. The static had gone silent now, like whoever had spoken was just waiting. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Every instinct told me to ignore it, keep driving. But my foot hesitated on the gas. What if it was another driver? Maybe someone had seen something. Maybe there really was someone in my trailer. The thought sent a cold shiver through me. I flipped the mic switch, my voice coming out steadier than I felt. "Who's this?" Silence. I waited, gripping the wheel so tight my knuckles ached. Nothing. Just the low hum of my engine and the whisper of wind outside. I exhaled slowly, forcing myself to shake it off. This was just some jackass messing around. Some kid with a radio trying to spook drivers for fun. But deep down, I didn't believe that. Another 10 miles passed, and I started to convince myself I was overreacting. Maybe the notes were unrelated. Maybe the radio was just picking up interference. I was exhausted, running on too much caffeine and not enough sleep. I just needed to focus on getting to my next stop. Then, the blinking red light came back. This time, it wasn't faint. It pulsed steadily, deep inside my trailer, like a slow heartbeat. My breath hitched. I checked the mirror again. No cars behind me, no headlights approaching. Just my truck and that damn light. I clenched my jaw and pulled onto the shoulder, gravel crunching beneath my tires. This was it. I wasn't playing games anymore. If someone was back there, I was going to find out. I grabbed my flashlight, yanked open the door, and climbed down. My breath came in short, visible puffs in the cold air as I rounded the side of the trailer. The red light pulsed again, closer this time. I hesitated just before reaching the latch, every nerve in my body screaming at me to stop. But I had to see. I had to know. With one deep breath, I reached out, grabbed the handle, and pulled. The doors swung open with a metallic groan, my flashlight cutting through the darkness inside. The trailer was packed tight with pallets, shrink-wrapped and stacked just the way they'd been when I picked them up. No sign of movement, no footprints. Just rows of boxes and that damn pulsing red light. It was coming from between the pallets, somewhere near the back. I hesitated before stepping inside, my boots echoing against the metal floor. The air was thick with the scent of cardboard and diesel. But something else too, something faint and metallic, like old pennies. My stomach twisted. I moved slowly, sweeping my light along the walls, trying to pinpoint the source of the blinking. Then, just as I rounded the last stack, my beam landed on something that shouldn't have been there. A small black device, no bigger than a deck of cards, was strapped to the side of one of the pallets with electrical tape. The red light blinked steadily from its center. My heart pounded. It looked like some kind of tracker, but why the hell would there be a tracker in my truck? My mind raced through possibilities. Cargo theft? A company mistake? But then my fingers brushed against something beside it, and I nearly dropped the flashlight. Another note, folded neatly and tucked just beneath the device. My hands shook as I pulled it free and unfolded it. The same handwriting as before. The same uneven, hurried strokes. Almost time. A rush of cold flooded through me, even though my skin burned with adrenaline. Someone had been inside my trailer. They had been close enough to leave this, to plant the device, to watch. And now they wanted me to know. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over a loose strap on the floor. My flashlight flickered, the beam shaking as I turned to run for the exit. But as I reached the doors, something made me stop. Out on the highway just beyond my truck, a pair of headlights had appeared. Not moving, not approaching, just sitting there, watching. I froze, gripping the edge of the trailer door, my breath coming fast and shallow. The headlights didn't move. Just two glowing orbs cutting through the dark, parked 100 feet down the shoulder. Someone was inside that car. Someone who had been waiting, watching. My first instinct was to slam the trailer doors shut and get the hell out of there. But then I thought about the tracker, the notes. Whoever this was, they had already been inside my truck. They knew my route. If I drove off now, would they just keep following me? Were they already inside, hiding somewhere I hadn't checked? The headlights flickered. Just for a second, like someone had tapped the brakes. A signal. A warning. I swallowed hard and reached for my phone, my fingers shaking as I tried to dial 911. No signal. Of course. Out here, in the middle of nowhere, I was completely alone. Screw this. I turned, yanked the trailer doors shut, and locked them tight. Then I climbed back into the cab, locking every door behind me. My pulse pounded in my ears as I jammed the keys into the ignition and fired up the engine. The truck rumbled to life, headlights cutting into the night. The car didn't move. I gritted my teeth and pulled onto the highway, accelerating fast, watching in my mirrors as the vehicle disappeared into the darkness behind me. It didn't follow. It just sat there, waiting. For the next 2 hours I drove like hell, my eyes flicking to my mirrors every few seconds. No red lights in the trailer, no cars trailing behind me. Just miles of empty road. But the feeling never left. The crawling sensation at the back of my neck, the certainty that I wasn't alone. When I finally pulled into a well-lit truck stop, surrounded by other drivers, I forced myself to breathe. I stepped out, circled my truck, checked every inch of it for another note. Nothing. The tracker was still taped inside the trailer, blinking its slow, steady rhythm. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to know what would happen if I did. The next morning, when I finally made my delivery, I checked again. The tracker was gone. No notes. No signs that anyone had ever been there at all. That was 3 years ago. I still don't know who left those notes or why they picked me. But sometimes, late at night, when I check my mirrors, I swear I still see it. That tiny, flickering red light. Waiting. I've been a trucker for almost 10 years now, and I've seen my fair share of weird stuff on the road. You spend enough nights driving through empty highways. You start noticing things. Lights in the sky, strange shadows moving just out of view, even people walking alone in places no one should be. But what happened to me a few months back on a long haul through the Midwest, I still can't explain it. And trust me, I've tried. It was late, past midnight, maybe closer to 1 in the morning. I was driving through a stretch of farmland in Nebraska, one of those roads where you don't see another car for miles. Just endless fields on either side, nothing but the moon and the occasional farmhouse light in the distance. I had the radio off, just the low hum of my engine and the sound of my tires on the asphalt keeping me company. I was making good time, but I had that kind of road-weary haze setting in, where your brain starts drifting, and you have to shake yourself awake every few minutes. That's when I saw him. A man standing in the middle of a plowed field, bathed in silver moonlight. He wasn't walking, wasn't moving at all, just standing there completely still, facing the road. At first I thought maybe he was a scarecrow, but as I got closer, I could tell he wasn't. His clothes looked normal, like jeans and a dark jacket. No hat, no farm gear, just a man, motionless in the dirt. The sight of him made my stomach tighten. There was something unnatural about it, like he was too still. I kept driving, telling myself it was nothing. Just some guy. Maybe a farmer checking his land. Maybe a drunk who wandered too far from home. But a few miles down, another field opened up to my right, and that's when I saw the second one. Another man, standing exactly the same way, facing the road, frozen in place. This one was closer to the fence line, so I could see his face better. Or at least, I should have been able to. But even with my headlights sweeping over him, his features were just blank. I don't mean he didn't have a face, just that it was expressionless, empty, like a mannequin that had been left outside too long. I felt my grip tighten on the wheel. The air in the cab suddenly felt too thick, too still. I didn't know why, but something about those figures made my skin crawl. I told myself it was just my mind playing tricks on me, that I was tired, that I needed to stop soon for coffee. But then, a few miles later, there was another one, then another. Every few minutes, as the road stretched on, I'd pass another field, and every time there would be a man standing in the dirt, watching the road. I started counting them. 5, 8, 10. All identical in their eerie stillness. Their clothes varied, some in jeans and flannels, others in dark jackets, but their posture never changed. Stiff, unmoving. I tried to convince myself they were just locals, maybe some strange rural thing I didn't understand, but deep down, I knew that wasn't right. No one stands like that. No one just stares, completely motionless, for miles and miles along an empty highway. I was gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles ached. The more I saw them, the worse the feeling in my gut got. It wasn't just fear, it was something deeper, something instinctual. A part of my brain screaming at me to keep driving, to not stop for anything. I reached for my phone, debating whether to call someone, maybe another trucker on the CB. But what the hell was I supposed to say? Hey, anyone else seeing a bunch of dead-eyed men standing in fields? Then I saw him. Not in a field, not off in the distance, but directly in my path, standing right in the middle of the road. I slammed the brakes, my tires screaming against the asphalt as the truck lurched forward. My headlights washed over him, and for the first time I could see one of them clearly. He was just like the others, blank face, motionless, But now that he was right in front of me, I could feel it. A presence, like something cold pressing into my chest. His eyes weren't glowing or anything, but they felt wrong, like looking into something that wasn't really human. I barely managed to stop in time. The truck hissed as I came to a full halt, my heart slamming in my chest. He didn't move. He didn't even blink. Just stood there, his arms hanging stiffly at his sides, staring at me. The worst part? He was close enough that I could see his breath in the cold night air. This wasn't some hallucination. This wasn't in my head. He was real. I didn't dare honk. I didn't dare roll down the window. Every instinct in me screamed not to acknowledge him, not to react. Slowly, I shifted gears, ready to swerve around him, when I noticed something in my mirrors. My stomach dropped. The fields on both sides of the road, the ones I had just driven past, they weren't empty anymore. They were full of them, dozens of them, maybe more. Lined up along the fields, standing shoulder to shoulder like silent sentinels. My pulse hammered in my ears as I scanned the mirrors, realizing they weren't just in the fields anymore. They were closer. Some stood just beyond the fence lines, their featureless faces barely visible in the dim glow of my taillights. Others had stepped onto the shoulder of the road, still unmoving, still watching. I had to get out of there. Every nerve in my body was on fire, screaming at me to move, to run, to do anything but sit there with my truck idling in front of that thing. I forced my hands to steady, shifted gears, and eased my foot off the brake. The figure in the road didn't react, didn't step aside. I had no choice. I pressed the gas and veered slightly to the right, just enough to avoid hitting him. As I passed, I made the mistake of looking. Just a quick glance. His head turned. Just slightly. Just enough for me to know that he was aware of me, that he had always been aware of me. I swear I saw his mouth move, a whisper of something I couldn't hear over the rumble of my truck. My chest tightened, but I kept going, hands locked on the wheel, refusing to look back. I don't remember how long I drove before I saw another car, but when I did, the figures were gone. Just empty fields stretching under the moonlight, as if nothing had ever been there. I didn't stop until I reached a truck stop hours later, hands still shaking as I climbed out of the cab. I wanted to tell someone, to ask if anyone had seen them too, but what the hell would I even say? Instead, I just sat there for a long time, staring at my reflection in the gas station window, trying to convince myself that it had all been some kind of exhaustion-induced hallucination. But I know what I saw. And sometimes, late at night, when I'm out on another lonely highway, I swear I can still feel them watching.